Thank you guys for being here. And again, my name is Ellie Hope Collins, and I am just really very, very grateful that you guys are here and you're here to hear about what reclaiming Christmas can mean for you this year and in future years as well. I'm just I really believe in this topic, and especially this year, I believe it's very, very important that we can step into this Christmas season. And I'm sure so many of you already have stepped into this Christmas season with a lot of intentionality and bravery. And we're just going to talk about some strategies of how to do that as well. Okay, little guy, can you go a little faster here? Here we go. This quote is one that I just think is so accurate. For Christmas is tradition time, traditions that recall the precious moments down the years, the sameness of them all. I think that's really, really true. I know that for me and my family, we have our traditions. We know what kind of foods we're going to eat. We know what movies we're going to watch. At least, when we're children and growing up, and then even when we become adults, there's sort of these rituals that we take on at Christmas time, and that's really natural and that's important. Christmas is kind of the essence of traditions for many families and many people. And some of those traditions for you might be being around your family and putting up the Christmas tree and those little handmade ornaments that you made when you were a kindergartner and your mom has kept forever. Or it might be Christmas caroling with your grandparents, or sitting around your parents' dining room with your whole extended family for a gigantic meal for Christmas. Or it might be watching the best Christmas movie of all time, which is Home Alone. And that, for me, that's a big one. Let me tell you, that's a big one. But we have these traditions that we just get kind of ingrained in us, and kind of what we can expect around Christmas. So this quote is just so great by author Edna Ferber. It says, "Christmas isn't a season, it's a feeling." And yeah, I think that's really true. And it's great if your life is a Hallmark movie. But for many of us that have experienced pain and loss, and especially just the devastation of a broken relationship, that can mean that Christmas means depression and anxiety and loneliness. And because let's face it, this is 2020, and that's kind of basically been our year. Am I right? So, those Christmas traditions might feel like looking at your Christmas tree and absolutely dreading it, or not even putting one up. It might mean listening to the radio and having to turn it off because too many songs remind you of that relationship that's broken. Or it might mean ordering a pizza because you don't want to eat that food that reminds you of that person you lost. Or it might mean settling for the far less amazing movie in the franchise, Home Alone, which is Home Alone 3. And if you've seen it, you'll know that it's not even a Christmas movie, you guys. I don't recommend it. Definitely recommend the first and second, not the third. But anyway, what I mean here is that Christmas traditions can feel broken, and they can begin to feel uncomfortable and untouchable. So in the next about 20 or 30 minutes that we're going to be talking, we're going to be sharing how we can step into these old traditions and create new ones, so that we're not living in avoidance and we're not living in this level of fear. So I'm going to share a little bit about my story, and this is a little bit more for Erin, which I'm so glad you're here, Erin. But I know that Tanya and Natalie know my story pretty well. But I was married to who I really believed was the love of my life in 2011. And we had, in my eyes, a really amazing life. We were doing ministry together. We were married for 5.5 years, and we got the dog, and we even had the white picket fence. I mean, like, quite literally, we had a white picket fence. And I was just so secure knowing this is who I'm going to spend my life with. And I never for a moment imagined that he would betray me. But fast forward 5.5 years into our marriage, I discovered an affair that completely devastated me. And I grew up as a Christian, I grew up as a believer, and I knew that God is a healing God and he brings restoration to broken places. So I thought, oh my gosh, of course, God's going to heal my marriage and he's going to make it even better than ever. And I began to work towards that, but that was not what my ex-husband chose. And long story short, I ended up taking that painful step of filing for divorce, which is never anything that I imagined that that would be my story. And I moved out of that beautiful home with a white picket fence and I moved into my parents' basement. And I was having frequent panic attacks and sleepless nights, struggling with insomnia. And I moved there just before Christmas, just days before Christmas. And that whole Christmas season and New Year's was so hard, so painfully hard to be facing that and facing it alone. And as I was going through this divorce process, I began to notice as I would drive around where I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, that I would constantly pass these places and listen to the radio and have all of these physical and abstract reminders of the pain of my broken relationship. And I began to see restaurants and think, oh, I can never go back there again. Because if I do, I might run into him there. Or I might run into him and her there. Or if I go back there, I will be so overcome with my emotions that I'll just break down and cry and I won't be able to face it. And I just had a list of these places. Everywhere I went, I was reminded physically of that same reaction to memories, to places that hold this pain that I now carried with my ex-husband. So I began to notice that I was kind of living in fear and I was driving the long way around these restaurants and I was definitely avoiding these songs and certainly not watching those kind of movies because they reminded me of my marriage. And I began to notice that I was living in this fear and living in this avoidance. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that I was living in this fear. So I made the choice to go back to these places and to reclaim them. So I made a spreadsheet of all of those places that reminded me of it, of this pain. And one by one, I went back to them with friends and family. And I began to call this process reclaiming. And I'm now just passionate about this and I just so believe in the process of stepping back in to these painful places because we are so much stronger than we know. And when something feels broken, it probably is, but it's not unredeemable and it's not it can be restored again. And so I want to talk about what this reclaiming actually is and how we can do it. So this reclaiming is this definition that I've created is identifying a fearful, painful internal reaction to a place or thing that holds a memory and choosing to face it head on and create a new positive association. So we're going to talk about what that means right now and how kind of the steps of what reclaiming is. So you might need to reclaim something. The first thing you need to do is identify the pain point. So this pain point is the indicator that something needs to be healed. So let's pretend that your back hurts. I mean, we've all had a backache at some point. Maybe you went a little too hard at the gym, a little incorrectly at the gym, maybe I should say, or maybe you helped a friend move and your back is just a little bit off, or you slept funny. So you have a pain in your back, and pain is an indicator that something needs to be healed. Something's out of whack, and you might need to go to the chiropractor and get readjusted. You might need to rest. You might need to do some stretching to get those things back in line to that pain will dissipate. And that's very similar to the pain in our heart. that there is a pain that wells up in our heart, and sometimes there are things that trigger that pain. There are places that trigger that pain, or maybe an article of clothing, or a song, like I've been saying as well. These are those pain points. And we need to begin to recognize what those pain points are. And we can call them like these triggers, like I said. It's important to ask ourselves this question: are you avoiding these things because of your hurt? And for a time, avoidance is totally understandable, and it's okay. Because if you've just discovered the pain of losing a spouse, or the loss of a job, or something like that, that acute pain needs to you need to be really gentle with yourself. But if there comes a point that you are driving the long way around, or really going going the long way to avoid something, it could be unhealthy for you. So that's the first thing we have to do, is identify those pain points. The second thing is we have to make the decision. We have to choose to step in. This is honestly just choosing to be brave. This is making the decision to go back to the place, to face the memory, to have the conversation, and to eat the food, whatever that pain point is. We are making a decision to go back to it. You have to make that decision even before you actually go back. This is just facing that trigger and facing that pain point with intentionality, with the decision to be brave. You've already identified it, and then you make that decision to just step in. And then the third thing you need to do in to reclaim something is to go back and create a new memory. So you have first identified it, you've made a decision, and then you do it. You go back and you face that memory to create a new one. So with this, it might be, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. I want to just make that very real. So we're probably not going to a lot of restaurants right now. But it might be, if let's say you have a food that you need, that has become a pain point for you because of the pain of a lost relationship. So you've first identified that food is a pain point. Now I'm going to make a decision to make that food. And then once you make that food, you're going to make a new memory with that food. It might not be a super profound moment of, an epiphany or something like that. But at the end of the day, you can remember that you actually made that food and you faced the pain point that this thing holds for you, to create something new. And it's really just, in a sense, choosing to see the beauty, see the beautiful thing that's in the ugly experience. Because we've all faced pain, we have all gone through hard stuff, but it's taking the beautiful thing out of the painful experience and creating a new memory, so you can say, I'm no longer avoiding this thing. So let's talk about how to actually do this with Christmas traditions. Actually, practically, how can we do this with Christmas traditions? So, as I've been talking, you've probably been thinking of a couple of these Christmas pain points for yourself. And probably some things are coming to mind. Maybe things that you've done with your ex, maybe whatever your case is. Or maybe it's how your former in-laws did. Or maybe it's the person that hurt you, the memories that you have with them around Christmas time. But the first step that you can do is something that I love. I love a list. I love making a list and checking it twice. And if I could check my checklist every day twice, I totally would, because it's so satisfying to check a list. Am I right? No, I'm definitely right. So, this idea of making a list and actually writing down, what are the pain points that are in my life? What are the things that are these painful memories that I can choose to step into to reclaim for myself? So this list for many people is on their phone. It might be on in their journal. It might be in your Bible. It might be on a Post-it note or a napkin. It doesn't matter. But there's something powerful about getting it out of your head and getting it practically on paper that makes it real. And then in this way, you're going to be able to look at this list that's in front of you and say, I can make a decision with each and every one of these items to actually go back, and you'll begin to see progress in your healing and in the restoration that's happening in your life. So step 2 in reclaiming Christmas traditions is to tell somebody else that's outside of your own journal. Tell them what you're doing, tell them about this process of reclaiming. 2020 has been anything but easy for everybody. It's been so challenging. And if it's taught us something, it's taught us about the power of community and how we need to fight against isolation. So, voicing your pain and your intention of reclaiming can be so powerful towards healing. So, let somebody know, even people in this call, we'd be happy to just hear, I want to reclaim these things on my list, and I'm going to do that this Christmas. No one's going to hold you accountable to this. If you don't want to do it, that's totally fine. This is not for everybody, but I believe so much in the power of just voicing this pain and voicing the intention of stepping into memories. It's powerful, you guys. And then finally, step 3. Step 3 is doing the thing and reliving the memory. You're actually reclaiming this thing. You're maybe making that food or watching the movie that has that pain point for you. And what are you going to do while you're doing it? While you're actually reclaiming this item, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to remember, you're going to relay, and you're going to recognize. So, first, you are going to remember what happened with this pain point. You're going to think about the memory, maybe journal about it, talk about it, and you're going to get the memory out of your head as well, and really just dwell on what happened. Why is this thing a pain point for you? Why has it caused you so much pain? Because when we're talking about these Christmas traditions, we, whether it's a song or a decoration or carols that we might listen to, it's not ever about the item. It's not ever about the song. It's not ever about the food. It's about the memory behind it. It's about the moment that love was shared, love was exchanged, and then love was broken. And that is painful. It's painful to think about the love that was lost. No matter what your situation is, it could be the death of a loved one, or a breakup, or a divorce. When love is shared and love is broken, we have items and songs that remind us of that, and those can bring up that pain. So it's important to remember what the memory is and how it's associated with the item. And the second thing you're going to do in reliving the memory is to talk about it. You're going to talk about it. Again, get it out of your head, talk about it to a friend. You're going to relay it. So we first have remember and then relay. Talk about it. Just get it out of your head. It's important to do this with trusted people, people that are going to take your pain and acknowledge it and say, yeah, that's valid, that's totally real. We can't just trust anyone and everyone with the pain of a broken relationship or the death of someone. It's important that trust is built and that we can trust somebody with the pain of what we're experiencing. And then finally, we are going to we're going to recognize and acknowledge that healing is happening in your life. And one of the reasons I love making a list so much is that you can practically see progress of how you have faced these pain points in your life. And I know so deeply that it can feel like you are not making any progress in your life, in your healing. It can feel like you have taken 3 steps forward and 17 steps backwards. It feels like that because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you can be hit with a wave of grief. And that is so, so real. Trust me, I was there so much. But every single day that you get out of bed, every single day that you face the day or stay in bed and cry all day, that's real. Also been there. But also, every time that you face a memory, you are taking a gigantic step in your healing process, and it's powerful. The fact that you are here right now watching this is a huge step even in your own healing, that you are positioning yourself to receive information and possibly apply it to your life. Is That's cause for you to recognize that healing actually is happening in your life. So those are the steps of reclaiming. I'm going to grab some water here. Yeah, those are the steps of reclaiming and how to create and reclaim old Christmas traditions. And I'm going to share some examples of how I did this. I was in my in-laws were Scandinavian, and they did the whole big Scandinavian meal. If you don't know what lutefisk is, um, don't don't try it. I wouldn't recommend it. It's probably one of the most disgusting foods on the planet, but it's considered a delicacy for Scandinavians around Christmas time. It's a fish and it smells really, really bad. But the rest of the food in that meal is superb. My former in-laws made this meal every year, and there was some amazing food, but also the lutefisk. So what I decided to do is, after my divorce, I loved the Swedish meatballs so much. I loved eating them every Christmas. So I made a decision to bring Swedish meatballs into my family's Christmas tradition. And in that way, I reclaimed Swedish meatballs, and I decided to bring that food into my family tradition. And that was one way that I was able to reclaim a food that caused me some pain, but that I also really loved. And another thing that I did is I reclaimed on Christmas Day, I reclaimed the St. Paul Cathedral with my family one Christmas after my divorce. And the St. Paul Cathedral was a place that I had some memories with my ex husband. It was on my list, and my family allowed me to go there with them on Christmas morning for a mass. And I'm not Catholic, my family isn't Catholic. But it was a really wonderful experience to create a new memory, but also to reclaim a place that did hold some pain for me, but to create a new memory with my family. And it became it's a really beautiful memory for me. 2020 this year is just, let's be honest, it's going to look different. It's going to be different than other years, not just because of maybe the pain that you've walked through this year, but because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so you may not be seeing the friends and family that you normally do see. But you may also not be seeing the in laws. You may not be seeing the person that you love so much that you, that relationship ended. So this year is going to look different. And maybe you're not even going to have your kids this year for Christmas, and that can be causing you a lot of pain. And these are really, really challenging realities of this year and maybe even future years. But this is also a really wonderful opportunity. If we can look at it that way, this is a wonderful opportunity to create new memories this year and this Christmas. If we look at it like that, we can actually make new memories. And we're going to talk about that now. Before we decide to create a new tradition and new memories, we need to be looking at a few things, and these are some tips and some ways that we can be thinking before we are creating new traditions. Is number one, know your why. Think about why and why you're choosing to create new traditions. Think about your motives here. Are you simply trying to avoid the pain points? Maybe you're trying to avoid the triggers, and so you just want to do something totally new. Or are you doing this because you want to step into your new life this year? And that's perfectly reasonable. Again, it is totally okay to avoid pain points and triggers. It's completely fine. There's a time for that, but that doesn't have to rule your life for too long. It is important to know why we want to create new traditions. Number two, it's important to remember and to accept what you cannot change. And what I mean by this is you can't, unfortunately, bring back this person. You can't change the fact that we are in the middle of a global pandemic. And you cannot change that Christmas is going to look different this year. But when we accept that when we accept these things that we can't bring these people back, that it's going to look different this year, that can actually begin to bring us and we can begin to accept the joy that is present this Christmas. So it is important to just accept what we can't change. Number three, recognize grief when it comes. So if you know anything about grief, you know that it comes in waves. And a lot of times it comes when we least expect it, or we are expecting it, and it can still be completely debilitating and so challenging. But grief is always a natural response to loss. It is the way that we have been designed. Grief is just natural. And these pain points that I'm talking about are often can trigger grief. And that is completely reasonable and completely natural. Grief does not have to rule your life forever. It's important that when we recognize that grief isn't the enemy, we can begin to accept it and not let it rule us forever. So accept the grief when it comes, recognize that it's there, notice it, name it, and then nurture it when it is there and when it is present in your life. Number four, focus on giving. Of course, we hear about this all the time. It's not about the gifts that we get, it's about what we give. But that's so true when we're thinking about creating new traditions this Christmas, because when we can look around us and see, okay, I'm not the only one hurting right now, or I'm not the only one going through something hard. When we can begin to see outside of our own pain and begin to see the beauty and even the hard things that other people are going through, we can actually begin to normalize our own emotions, and it can really help us in our healing process. So, supporting somebody else and what they're going through can be a powerful step in your own healing as well. Number five, ask for help. We talked about this quite a bit, just talking to other people and letting other people know what's happening in your life, and even that you want to be reclaiming these things. Asking for help is so powerful. And also, this way, asking for help can mean, hey, how can I make a new tradition this year? You can get other people's ideas about how to create these new traditions. It can be a really, really exciting thing that you can do with people. And then number six, think outside the gift box or think outside the box. Obviously, we know that things are going to look different this year, but this can actually you can begin to be creative about how to make these new traditions. Maybe you can do something a little bit abnormal, something that you have always wanted to do. I think there's still a little bit of time to learn about Hanukkah if you wanted to do that. You could still learn about Hanukkah. Or maybe you want to adopt a family rather than give gifts in your own family. Adopt a family in need and buy them gifts. help out at a food shelf or something like that. Go on a trip. I mean, there's many things and many things that we can do this year to think outside the box and get creative with the way that we're creating new traditions this year. So, I really want to hear from you guys about what you are reclaiming this Christmas. So, I would love, 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 love to see what you're reclaiming. Use the hashtag I reclaimed it. If you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook or Twitter, I am Instagram at hope_reclaimed. And I would just love to see what you guys are doing and how you're reclaiming this Christmas. I understand it's complicated with social media and putting these stuff on and these reclaiming journeys and all that. Not everyone feels comfortable doing that, and that's totally okay. You guys just even DMing me what you're doing means so much to me, and I would love to celebrate people taking steps and making just taking steps in your own healing. It makes me really excited. And I'm also very excited to share with you guys about the Reclaimed Intensive, which is a program that I will be launching in January. And there's a couple days left for you guys to sign up for this intensive. So this is a 5-month intensive from January until May for coaching for women who are really ready to take ground in their healing in 2021. Because obviously, 2020 has been so challenging. And, I'm talking about taking these steps and asking for help and bringing people on this reclaiming journey. And this is the group for you if you want people to go with you, not just in reclaiming physical places, but reclaiming abstract areas of your own heart to actually see progress in your healing. So this is through individual coaching with me and as well as group coaching. These coaching calls are going to be intentional and they're going to be they're going to be a little bit more work, but in a really lighthearted and open and free way, because I understand that your heart might still be hurting. And so to have a little extra pressure can be a little challenging right now. And I completely understand that. So there's lots of grace there. And there's also in this program, there is also access to my online course that I developed back in the summer, which is called Healing from Divorce. And this online course is an 8-week program designed for you to reclaim a different area of your life every week. And we're going to be going through that as a group. And if you're interested in more information here, I would love to talk to you about it. Just a couple more days left. We're only allowing 12 people in this intensive, 12 women. And so I would love to see if you would be a good fit for this intensive. But finally, this is kind of my socials, the things that I'm doing. We have a podcast, and I'm on Instagram, the online course, and then of course the free community, which is the Reclaimed community. And yeah, all that information is right there.